All right, we're coming in on the high seas, a little salty. We're going to play a little conversation game, and we're going to call it The Boat. And Justin's going to let you know where you could find us, and then we're going to teach you how to play this game with your friends, and we're going to play it ourselves and just have a good time and have a conversation and build our relationship over the next 30, 40, or 50 minutes.
All right, so welcome to the Wags and Fresh podcast, episode 12. You can find us on our YouTube page, the Wags and Fresh podcast. That's on YouTube. We're also on Anchor, the Wags and Fresh podcast, and we haven't been on Facebook Live recently, but one of these days we'll get back on there. So for now, just YouTube and Anchor. So yeah, let's jump into the game. I'm excited about this. I guess, where do you want to start?
So here we go. We're going to do before you get on the boat. So you walk up to the dock. Which boat do you choose?
Okay, so which boat do you choose? I don't know what that question means.
Well, you could take it anywhere from a newer boat,
I see.
a boat that's been proven out to sea, an older boat, a boat that you made yourself.
Gotcha.
It could be any type of boat.
Gotcha. For me, I definitely want more modern. I thought about that. I was thinking about some of the older boats, which would be cool and have its own. I think these old schooners and big boats that exist that still are out there today. But I think for me, I wanted something a little bit not quite a yacht, but something in that scope of modern that would give some technology.
Would it change your opinion at all if a lot of people think adversity creates growth over comfort?
No, I mean that's true. Adversity creates growth, but I don't think that one type of boat will give you. I didn't choose modern because I think it's easier.
Right.
I chose modern because of some of the things that would give me that I would rather have. Because there'll be different adversities.
Like a radar?
Yeah, well, that, but you could still use a compass and the stars and all that other stuff on some of the older boats, hundreds of years old. So I'm not as much worried about that. It was just much more of a little bit of a style thing, but also just more of, I don't really see that there would be any, there would be just different adversities, in my opinion.
So I'll just take the older boat just so we have another approach, but I will stay close to your boat.
Fair enough. Well, I'll ask you a question then. Well, then what are you going to name your boat?
My boat would be named Jesus for sure.
Okay. Mine is the SS Challenger. I definitely thought about how that reflects me. And how I approach the world. So it would be kind of the way I approach the sea. It would be to challenge the sea, not to do anything stupid, but to push maybe a little bit more than somebody else would. I wouldn't want to play it overly safe. And also the Challenger is really sort of how I approach life, right? I challenge myself and others around me, and that's sort of that word in particular sort of encapsulates me a little bit.
And when you think of Challenger, you do think of not just that mid-range boat that you're talking about, but you almost think of those exploration type vehicles, because under the water to me is just as interesting as on the water, which is just as interesting as the sky would be at night or all those other things.
Yep.
But under the water and all those, exploration things that go, you go in the bubble and you can go way down, or the snorkeling and the scuba diving.
Yep.
That sort of, fits in with those type of things. All right, so let's figure out the people you would bring on the boat and why.
Okay. So I guess I have a follow-up question to that, though.
Sure.
Is there a limit of people that we could put on the boat?
Only for the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I also will make the assumption that if there's somebody on the boat that has a significant other, then that significant other would automatically come.
If they sit on their lap.
There's only so many seats, but I think the point of this conversation
That is them, though.
Isn't to say that it's only this person. It's
right.
Why that person is really.
It's who they represent.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, all right. Well, who do you want to start with?
Let's start with the person who got us the microphones.
All right. Yeah, she's top on my list. We just added a nice little feature. We have these new microphones that have lapel clips on there, so we can have better recording. And what's great about these, and I think we didn't realize this until we opened it up today, was the extension cords and how far we can be sitting from one another and do this. But more importantly, long term, is some of those recording challenges we had in the past while we were in our cars will now be a moot point, because we'll be able to wear these microphones while we're driving if we choose to record something and don't have to hold a phone or talk through Bluetooth or anything like that. So shout out to Jesse for that.
And I think you could just go topic wives.
Exactly.
So then that way we can just,
So since she's my wife, I guess I'll
I'll
jump into that. For me, she's probably the most ethical person that I've ever met. As much as she can at times try to have this hard, New Yorker attitude, especially when that's much more of a protective or defensive posture that she has. It's not an aggressive posture. Most people who know her don't see that side of her, because they don't provoke her to be that way. But she definitely has that ability to make sure that she challenges the world only when she's provoked to push back. But what's unique about her with me is that she's pretty much one of the only people, but a very short list of people, that are willing to push me. Push back very hard, because most people might give me advice, might give me feedback, but they do it in a less than aggressive way. She's willing to push back as hard as she needs to.
So I'm assuming you have a big boat.
Yeah, there's lots of there's a whole front side and a back side. It's real wide. There needs to be a lot of space, because there are moments when we need our different sides of the boat for sure, and that definitely happens at home. But she's definitely there for me because of those things. Like, just she's somebody I can rely on and look to when I'm not as ethical as she is. I don't think I'm unethical, but she just has this sort of better core of who she wants to be and how she wants to be kind to others. And she has that, and sometimes she reminds me of, being a different way because of who she is.
I think people close to you, there's just such a unique factor they bring to things. Not only in the way they've been able to know you, but also in their response to you, because it doesn't have to be filtered. And, having a filter isn't necessarily what we always need to help each other.
Right.
So, I don't know of anybody else who knows me, knows my insecurities.
We're talking about Jen at this point.
Or anybody that close.
Yeah.
So, especially Jen. And just, when you just need that breakthrough, or you're in that situation. And it's weird, because sometimes they're your cheerleaders, but sometimes somebody who knows you too well isn't always your ultimate cheerleader.
Right.
But they give you something that you just can't find anywhere else. There's so many times where, I think I know her so well that I've already finished her sentence in my mind. And it's a shame, because usually the next thing she said is so true or right, and so helpful that it's that it ends up, changing the course of things for the better. And if so many times you're looking at the relationship, but to look back on the relationship, not just about you together, but about where you've become. There's nobody else you'd want on a trip or journey that involves adversity, the unknown, seeing things maybe you've never seen before and you're in awe of and you want to share with somebody. Just even the simplest little things that happen along a journey that are supposed to be embraced. I mean, there's nobody better, to do that with than your spouse or the people that are closest to you.
For sure. Why don't you continue on then with the next person that you put on the boat?
We'll go with, the stock answer of children.
Sure. I mean, there's no way to not start off down this road, right?
Right.
But I think that it's important in this particular game it's a great way to allow people to hear you say why you appreciate them.
Right.
Right? That's what this whole exercise allows you to do. And what then you see them as being able to contribute on this boat, right? And this journey you're about to take.
Yeah, and the kids are a whole different slant. And, I think their slant is, and especially, younger before they become jaded like we did as adults.
Sure.
I mean, the playful nature, the wonderment, the excitement, the exploration, the seeing things for the first time, the non-judgment of seeing something that looks like the something they've already seen. Like adults just get so into either already having an idea about something. What's that again?
Categorization.
Right, yeah. There's so many things you don't experience either because you've experienced them, which it still isn't the same experience, or something similar to it that you don't even explore, whereas kids, look at everything new for the first time. So I think if you're going to go on a journey and explore and learn and be in wonder, that is like being a child again. So who better to do it than somebody who knows how to be a child and has that fresh look and perspective. And it's also important, it's funny, we're going individually, but they're not individual. Referring back to Jen, we get enjoyment from watching Mackenzie enjoy the journey.
Sure.
So it's not like the parts are disconnected. They're all connected.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you get, even though you've experienced those things, you get a little bit of that sensation and maybe even a better appreciation for the experience that they're having because you know how excited they are because you've experienced some of those things in the past and their wonderment and all of whatever the world. But it's almost better because when you go through it, you're just, there's so many other factors in your mind that you take away from it. But as a parent, you're like, I'm so glad they're having this experience, right? Because you enjoyed that experience, as maybe even not as much in the moment versus how much you remembered it after the fact. It was like, I really appreciated having that moment. And the other thing kids do is, when the seas get rough, they're for me, even more so than Jesse, they're the reason why I'm willing to stay up, as late as I have to get through the storm, to do whatever it takes to get through
no time
the
for a
adversity.
pity party.
Yeah, exactly, because it just becomes, I have to ensure that they're going to be okay, and so I'm willing to do things that if they weren't on the boat, I might not.
Right. Yeah, people who look to you, it's if number one is we need to be loved, as a universal. Two is being needed.
Yeah, for sure. So any specific things about Mackenzie that you wrote down?
No, what I was, thinking about the seeing things new for the first time, it's not just like you would see something you never saw before. I think the child and the wonderment and, Mackenzie's 8, so that's the world we're in. It's a rebirth of parts of you that have died. To see things in a way that you should be seeing them, because all our thoughts and feelings as a kid were the right ones. It's the world that have made us adults and made us who we are today, and the things that aren't pure about us anymore, they're all learned.
Sure.
And the other, that's why it's so valuable to embrace that and become more of that as a parent than have the kid become more of you and the because I said so type of stuff more exploring things with them, and being reborn again in areas that have died because of, for whatever reasons.
Yeah, I was just recently watching something, and you bring up a point that is interesting, that it's like this middle section of our life that we get distracted and bogged down with all this complicated noise, where when you're younger and then when you're older, there's, they call it wisdom when you're older, but you have sort of a youthful, playful approach to life and appreciation for life in a way that you did as a kid, but because it was all new, right? Mm-hmm. It's two different, it's bookends in the same way of life, but just obviously in different places and different experiences. So I've just been recently watching some things with some older characters in the shows, and it's kind of tapped into some of that for me, and that wonderment or just appreciation for life in a way that I think we have as kids too, but because it's just so new, and we just lose all that in the middle of it, right? So which I think is what has inspired us and motivated us to have these conversations weekly, because we want more of that now. Mm-hmm. Not just we had it when we were younger and we're going to have it again when we're older, but what are we appreciating and doing today that can give us that enjoyment as well. So I do have a few little specifics about the kids for me.
Sure.
So with Caitlin, I think she underestimates how smart she is, but she has the capability of doing pretty much anything she wants to, and when she wants to put her mind to it, she does. So she would be a very valuable person to have on the boat, because you don't have to over explain things and explain things 10 times to her. She gets things both from a big picture perspective as well as some of the details. So she'd be somebody that really quickly could pick up and help. Kieran would be different, because he's got that sort of intellect that at times he doesn't understand the small stuff as easy, but he'd be able to put him down in the belly of the boat and say, okay, I need you to figure out how to navigate this map. And he could spend a few hours analyzing data and come back with a different approach. So he would have a different skill than anybody else of the kids. Cameron has some of that as well, but she'd be somebody that'd be grooming, that if something happened to me on the journey, she's taking over, right? She'd be the one who would be the next up to lead
until she learns
journey.
About mutiny. She could just
she might at some point be like, this. Let's I'm tired of this direction we're going in. I'm taking over. And then Chloe, she has that sort of ethical DNA that Jesse has, and I know that we get a lot of feedback from other parents and people, and I think that sweet is always the word that they use when it comes to Chloe, but I think where that comes from is she has just a compassion for life and people, and everyone calls her the pet whisperer and all those things, but she's like the example on the boat of how you should treat each other, right? I'm sure she gets frustrated with people and all of that, but she doesn't have malice, right? So for me, she's the example that other people could say, yeah, there's going to be those moments when I got to be on one side of the boat and Jesse's got to be on the other side. But she's really the example that we should all be following, so that way we could get along and make the journey as enjoyable as possible. So for me, that's just some quick notes I had about them.
That's awesome. We'll go to the next topic, but just to sum up the last category, are the people and influences that we have that help us be the best version of ourselves. And also, it would take very little communication for somebody to be there. Like, there's people, like if we were getting on the boat and they knew we were getting on the boat, there aren't even people we'd have to call that would be there.
Right.
And that's the group that fills in all those, not just fills in the gaps. I mean, they're a big part of who you are. And actually, when the things that are most important to us, that family structure, that's the place you go to get resources to come back a better husband, a better father,
Sure.
a better person.
Sure. Yeah, no, I have a short list of myself. I don't, I was starting to write more people and realized, okay, they might be people that I would consider at some point. But obviously, for me, you would definitely be on that list because you have similarities to what you do for me, as Jesse does. The difference is that you're not as aggressive is not the right word. You're more.
I'm not on your boat.
No, you're on the boat.
No, I mean living. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, it's not just that, but it's not just that. But I think that because you have the ability to take a different position than I do on a topic, and be able to talk through it. And maybe you're frustrated after we get off the phone or you leave, but you don't show that in the conversation, and it allows for me to take that information probably a little bit easier than if it was just, I don't agree with you and you're wrong, and which again, Jesse gives me enough of that already that I need. I don't really need another person to do that, and especially because of the depth of the content that we talk about. I have other people in my life that can fight back with me, but it's on more superficial stuff, and so what you would be able to provide and what you do provide right now is that a sort of a safe place where I can say, hey, here's a topic that I have, an issue that I have, and you're not necessarily going to agree. Sometimes you might, sometimes you won't. You will agree, but when you don't, you kind of say, well, did you ever think about it like this? Did you ever consider this factor or that factor? And that allows for me to say, take that information in a sort of, again, in that sort of a safe zone, and realize that maybe when I'm driving away after we had that conversation while we were surfing or something, and go, oh yeah, maybe I should have thought about it this way or that way. And for me, that's what you do for me, and it allows for there to be the ability to have dialogue on important content and topics. But I'm not worried about, if you're going to not agree with it, that it's going to be confrontational. And so it allows for it to be, I think, a more productive conversation.
Yeah, and for me, growing up as a people pleaser, with one of my core values being authenticity and finding my true self, that's the area where, you're the area I practice that.
Right.
I practice my authentic communication without a filter, which helps me, be able to do that in other areas. So it definitely works both ways.
Yeah, for sure. Who else do you have on your list?
Just the old crew.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what's interesting about it is, it's not, even though we've had massive time together, it's not like time. That time built something, but that time was almost eternal because the time isn't there anymore, but the relationship hasn't changed.
Exactly. Yeah, it's we're very fortunate. As we've gotten older, I think we all recognize that there are a lot of people that have relationships come and go, and oh yeah, I lost touch with so and so and this and that, and we've all worked very hard to try to keep it together, and we probably could have a whole podcast on why that reality exists, on why we're all still in communication and in touch with one another in whatever way and frequency we are. But to your point, if it's not going to go away, right? There's no amount of time that's going to change that fact. And for me, one of the things that Dave specifically brings into the equation for me is he's been able to be somebody that at times I don't necessarily agree with some of the things that he thinks or does or whatever, but that's not really relevant because that's the reality for all of us. But he is a great example of how to prioritize the right people or the important people in your life. And I think that there have been times in my life where I struggled with that, get pulled in different directions, or allowed myself to be pulled in different directions. And he's been kind of that constant reminder of prioritize, wife and family and friends and people that are important to him.
Not just on paper, but with your time.
With his time.
Yeah.
And he does it day in and day out and relentless with it. And it's just such a great example for me and I think that it's changed me. I think that I've changed because of that. Allowed myself to eliminate noise and people from my life that don't need to be there because they're just a waste of time. And so that's definitely what he brings to the table for me. I don't know if there's something else that you...
Yeah, no, I mean...
And not to mention that he would be great on the boat from a music standpoint, from, we
got to bring Fugel along.
Yeah,
in late case we lose Google connection, we
right,
can always
exactly.
Fugel it.
And but also I think that he's somebody that whether he knows how to... Like, I'm not a handy person at all, and I don't even try to be. Whereas he will try almost anything. Like, he'll be like, I'm going to Google how to do...
car.
Car, appliances,
yeah,
carpentry,
kitchens, yeah,
all of that stuff, and you need somebody like that on a boat.
Yeah.
So he brings a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, the creative, the art, so many things that, so many aspects that, like, nobody else brings into the friendship.
Yep.
Such unique characteristics, and Chris is that way, with his, Phil's that way. But just people that you could call and they'll be there, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And they're all a little unique in their ways, and it works individually, and it also works as a group. Not every friend who has a friend is friend with their other friends as well.
Right.
Like, whereas the people we're talking about, they could hang out with us, without us, or all together,
right.
And to have that. And it's funny because the other day, I don't know, I just responded to somebody and said there's strength. Somebody was saying something about something I was doing, and I said there's strength in the pack.
Right.
Meaning, like, I'm not the only one doing it.
Right.
You're feeding me, I'm feeding you,
right.
Together. That's what keeps all the momentum going. So it's a good pack. But let's get on the boat. All right. So getting on the boat. So the boat is sort of metaphorical for a journey. So let's think of the boat as, when's the right time to make a change? When's the right time to get out of your comfort zone? When's the right time to go out and learn something new? When are you frustrated with the dock? You're
right.
tired of being on the dock, or whatever. All those categories come together. So when is the right time to get on the boat? And just some subcategories. How involved is the weather? What resources have to be available? What's your situation on land? And the concept of what's waiting at sea. So what is the right time to get on the boat for you?
For me, it's always the crack of dawn. As early as possible, probably at the dock, still the sun's not up yet, getting kind of everything in order, get everything on the boat while the day's warming up a little bit. And
so the journey and day sort of match up.
They do.
Yeah.
And I know that seems but simplistic, but for me, it's I just find my days to be much more productive and more in line with what I want to try to accomplish long term and just that day when I'm doing it that way. When I roll out of bed later in the day, it seems like the whole day just, you look up and you go, oh, I did a couple things, but I really wasn't as productive as I really could have been if I would have approached the day almost, again, attacked. I almost look at it like, because getting up at 5 a.m. isn't always great. It's not fun. Some days are more fun than others. But a lot of days it's okay. The alarm went off and you're pulling yourself out of bed.
But the only problem is the getting up part.
That's it.
Yeah, that 5 minutes for the 23 hours and 55 is definitely worth it.
Yep.
Versus getting the extra 5,
Yep.
getting the extra 30, and losing out on 20.
For sure.
It's a fair exchange for sure.
For you, what about you?
Yeah, I was thinking of it as, the weather's not always going to be perfect. The resources, you may have what you need. Some things you may be able to get along the way. But getting the journey started is important. You talked about when the journey starts, which I definitely agree with for me physically and the way I'm wired. but getting the journey started is so important. And I have, been thinking about this over and over, and just different things, and filtering it through this boat analogy. And sometimes, until you leave the dock, you can't see the first buoy.
Right.
It's outside of the harbor.
Sure.
So until you get the boat moving, but you have to make sure you got a good boat. You have to make sure it's seaworthy. You have to make sure you have more than you need to get to wherever you're going, even if it's where you think you're going, because that plan may take a little longer than you expect. But yeah, sometimes you have to get out before the next buoy appears. And sometimes there's things that go along the way that, your planning is basically using what you have available to get on the boat and get out of the harbor. Your plan isn't necessarily the entire charted course, even though you may have charted the course.
Right.
And once you get out, there may be some things, other things you want to see. You may get to a buoy and have a different path that you want to take, or the course may just be altered. But like we've talked about in the past, whatever course you're on, it's actually the true charted course, not not your simulated one.
Well, going back to when do you go? It's not even really, to your point, not even specifically a time of day. You have to be prepared to recognize that there's multiple different scenarios, from time of day, weather, so forth and so on, that you could list as being all the factors in taking off. And you should really only have the most extreme no-go situation to say, okay, I'm going this morning unless this one thing is going on, and whatever that one thing is. You don't have to have that, but there may be, from a safety perspective, some reason that you have to have that sort of one no-go thing, whether it's this gigantic
the perfect storm.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's,
But other than that, if it's raining, go. If it's windy, go. If there's, if it's super hot, go.
If it's not going to kill you.
If it's not really going to be dangerous for the boat, other than a little uncomfortable for a temporary period of time, go.
Right.
And I think that's just the point I wanted to make as far as...
Well, that's true, because how do you know 3 days into the journey that the perfect weather for the perfect spot at the perfect time doesn't happen?
Right.
And if you had left at the perfect time from the shore, that opportunity and those things you could have saw never would have happened.
Right.
And being on shore those other 3 days, it's just 3 more days of what you've already seen.
Right, exactly.
So that's pretty cool. Journey. How would the journey be? What would you be most excited about? Let's do that one first.
The unknown. I mean, just knowing going into a journey like this that you are going to get to different points and say, well, we have to, look over in that direction. There's a bunch of birds over there, which probably means there's a bunch of fish over there, which let's go in that direction south or southward, because of the fact that we need food, and there's a food supply in that direction. And just those little tiny decisions that have to be made, that going in are going to have to be made, but you don't know what they're going to be. And then within that, what do you uncover when you make the left turn, the right turn, north, south, whatever it is? Because in my mind, I'm always sailing west. I don't know why. I never envision myself sailing east. So I don't know why that is. Maybe that's just because we've learned history in a way that everything always went from east to west. So anyway, that's just the way I envision it. So, what about you?
Yeah, I think the journey would be fun, and all the unknowns that happen each day. And I also think not just visually and stimulation wise, like the actual experience, but also who you're becoming, managing and growing in the relationships that are close to you, and who they're becoming along the way. But you'd almost have to, I think, vocalize that and focus on it for it to be important for everybody.
Right.
But I think people, if everybody could buy into that, they would have such a better time knowing that there's something you can look at, you can control, and you could come out of it better. And then wherever you are is already going to be great.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's also some times when you think to yourself in this and that, and like it's just so big, we didn't discuss how long we're trying to have this journey last, but how important the beginning of that journey is, that taking that moment, to your point, to express what you're hoping to gain from it, right? What you're hoping they gain from it. Having that sort of, that's why there's things like toasts, right? There's a reason for those types of life experiences, to set the tone for what you want to do, and then also be prepared that when you get to that place where it's ending, that there's a moment to take that in and say, look what we just accomplished. And so there's these other moments in the big grand scheme of things that are just as important as those individual along the way journey moments. And those can be really planned and calculated because of the fact, because that they're important moments. They're important to kick it off correctly and to kind of wrap it up and summarize things in that way after the journey's over.
It's interesting. Once you said length of the journey, I thought to myself for a second, it really doesn't matter how long it is, because the first moment when you live based off philosophy or principle or just a way of doing things, like all those moments matter and are connected. So, and unfortunately, nobody ever knows how long the ride is.
Yeah, for sure. And that's
so the
why
sooner you get on the boat, and the sooner you try to have an awareness and about what you want to do and accomplish on the boat, then the longer the ride, the shorter the ride, becomes more about the ride.
Yeah, you end up being able to appreciate every moment during the journey more when you realize that this boat ride is obviously the metaphor for your life, and if you don't think about it in those terms, then you can be distracted by a lot of things that get you off course, but it also doesn't allow you to articulate, again, going back to what I had just said, articulating what you're trying to accomplish and communicating to the people on that boat how you appreciate them being there and being there on the journey with you, and then in the moments how you appreciate what they're contributing at that particular time. So I think a lot of this is just a great exercise and game to play that hopefully, I know I will, be more conscious of how to appreciate those people on the boat ride I'm on right now.
Couple things to finish up. Destination. Where are you and who are you?
Destination. Okay. I just have, again, I've always envisioned this idea about, I've used boats and sort of directional analogies as it relates to goals in the past. So for me, and again, I've always felt I'm going westward, but I think I'd want to do it on the Pacific Ocean, and go to islands like the South Pacific and places like that where I really don't know that much about them, and it's just intriguing to me. It's intriguing that whether it's Fiji or Tahiti or Bora Bora, or I don't even know where these places are. If you told me, and I'm okay in geography, I know generally where they are, but I don't know specifically where they are. So I think for me, that whole Polynesian, whatever, Pacific island culture is intriguing to me, and I think I would want to go in there. And for me, that sort of represents just wanting to learn more and understand people, different people, as much, and you get exposed to that and have those experiences as much as possible. That's for me. I'm not a people person in general. Like, I don't want to go and talk to a bunch of people every day, but I do like meeting new people. I do like meeting new interesting people and people that I've never met before, whether it's a type of person, a culture, things like that are intriguing to me. What about you?
I think I'm definitely a warm environment type of person. Yeah, I would love to see, blue waters and
Right.
all sorts of things like that. And I mean, even, the lifestyle of the boat would be, snorkeling and swimming and all the things that happen around the water and around beaches. I just feel that when thinking about traveling by boat, um, not just boat people, but the places that boats take you, whether it be by person or by philosophy, those are my kind of people.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
people closer to the water think a little more like I like to be around people that think, just
Right.
positive,
Yep.
you know, you think of all these
Outdoors.
different places. Like, what's the motto in Jamaica? No worries. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you
Right.
go to
Right.
these island places,
Sure.
Hawaii, Ahana,
Right.
family, no one gets left behind. Like these cultures that have made their life around water, and water is life. Um, it's just, the places that boats would take you would be the kind of places I'd want to be. And it's interesting. I don't know how well that works once you get into Arctic caps. I don't know if the sunshine and the water.
Sure.
You need that combination of both to get that kind of vibe. But I think that's something that I know I would enjoy is that island.
And I think to follow the second part of that question is who are you? Who do you want to become, or who are you going?
Yeah, I mean, based off the name of the boat,
Because I know I want to start off being the person that has to gather the people, get people on board, get everybody to understand what their roles are, push people to do whatever their respective job is as well as they can. But by the end of that journey, I want to be the person who's somebody else has taught somebody else how to do that,
right.
and I don't have to do that anymore.
Yep.
And by the time that it's over, it's now somebody else's journey. It's now somebody else's boat. It's no longer my boat.
Right. And what's interesting about people being in their own head is no matter how much of your boat that it is, everybody's on a different ride.
Right.
Even with all the same exact factors in
Sure,
place.
sure.
So that's interesting. That's the last question was, how did you benefit or impact the people you were on the journey with and the people you met along the way? So yeah, I think that for me, who you are, the more I read and study the Bible, and the more I learn to love God and to serve others and to walk humbly and to lift people up and be a servant to their needs, and the more I can keep my pride and what I want in check, the more I see the benefits of living that way, the
Right.
more the people around me respond positively, not only in their life, but in the way we interact. And so that would be just one big training ground for that, just like either on the boat or in my day. That is just always the goal, to use all those situations I'm in as an opportunity to try to express those truths more and share them with people so that they can be who they were created to be. And it's such a backwards thing to think how making your life about somebody else's journey can make your journey better, but for some reason it just works out that way.
Sure. And that's that's why when I named the boat, for me it's not about the number of people that I could even put on the boat. It's about the hopefully trying to push the people around me in a way that they become better after our experience together, right? Sometimes that's through encouragement, sometimes that's through direct challenging, but in a way that allows for them to, whether they appreciate it in the moment or it's something that they learn over time, but really that does tie into what I try to accomplish every day, which is to push the people and myself in a way that allows for there to be a slightly better version of who you were. And some days you have success in that, some days you don't. But and I even go so far as to say I do it so much that there are plenty of people that I know that I try to push, and they'll never get it, or they'll get it really late in the game, and I don't attach myself to that. I don't worry about whether they do or not, and I'm not judging my success or failure as being somebody who challenges people based off of whether they have the even desire to improve themselves. So, that does allow for there to be some other challenges I have in my life because, not everybody likes to be challenged. and so there are people that don't as appreciate that reality. But for me, that this would be tied into kind of the purpose of my life, really, which is trying to do what I can, leave some sort of mark on the people that I care about in a way that allows for them to enjoy their life better. So
I think that's why it's important for you to know what the name of the boat is and for you to know what your life is about, because people do have a choice if they get on the boat or not.
Right, exactly. Yeah, because if they don't have any interest in being that, then maybe they choose not to be on the boat. They can be invited.
Yeah, you'll see them at the next stop.
Right, exactly.
It's no big deal.
Well, this has been a great game, and we play this game a lot more than we realize, whether it's an individual word or a topic. So I appreciate the in this exercise in this game today, because it made me think about a lot of things that I haven't had the time or made the time for. So,
and I think that's why analogies are so powerful. It can get you to see or think about something that you think about all the time, but in a different way, that it causes you to think of it in a different way.
Right.
Versus just go into your auto reply.
Yeah. Because the details of life can get in the way of us seeing the bigger picture lesson that you can learn. So, well, I hope that's what you take from this, and I know I will take from this, and anybody who's listening will take from this. So I appreciate everybody taking the time, and hopefully you spend some time with your family or your close personal friends and decide what your boat ride wants to look like and who's on it. So thank you.
Have a great day.